Hey people, it's NIyas713. Now, I want to have a preface of this. I didn't call this one a Black Heroes video, I called it a Black History video because considering what's happened in Ukraine and all these blacks, Africans, and people from America going there to fight, and I thought how embarrassing it is, I wanted to make it clear that all these black soldiers going to fight for these racist white nations that treat them so badly is not something to be cheered for or approved of. That being said, Eugene Bullard was come from a different time, and back then they didn't know any better, so that's not a reflection on him. But still, like I said, I don't want to be calling anybody a hero for this kind of behavior in the 21st century now. Anyway, let's keep going. Read this from history.net. America's first black fighter pilot fought for the French. Facing incredible odds and racial obstacles in 1916, Eugene Jacques Bullard excelled in role as America's first black fighter pilot. Eugene Bullard made history as America's first black fighter pilot. At the Café Capulet in Paris in the spring of 1916, 3 American soldiers of the French Foreign Legion were commiserating with a fourth who was convalescing from a shrapnel wound. Jeff Dixon, a white Mississippian, asked Eugene Bullard, his injured black comrade in arms from Georgia, "Gene, suppose they find you're too lame for the infantry." Bullard's answer raised eyebrows around the table. "I'll go into the air service." "Air Force," Dixon exclaimed. "You know damn well, Gene, there aren't any Negroes in aviation." "Sure do," Bullard said. "That's why I want to get into it. There must be a first to everything, and I'm going to be the first Negro military pilot." That friendly argument swiftly evolved into a $2,000 wager. Bullard, who would emerge as history's first certified black American aviator, won the bet. While a black pilot was unprecedented in 1916, accepting challenges and overcoming obstacles was nothing new for Eugene Jacques Bullard. Born on October 9, 1894, he was the youngest son among 10 children, 3 of whom died in childbirth. His father, Octave Bullard, was the son of a black slave. His Creek Indian mother, Joyaki, died when he was 6. Living in Columbus, Georgia, young Gene grew up dealing with Southern bigotry, but he was inspired by tales his father told him of a faraway land where a man's social prospects were not limited by his skin color, France. In 1904, determined to reach France and begin a new life, 10-year-old Gene began a rambling odyssey that led to his stowing away abroad a merchant freighter, only to be caught and put ashore in Aberdeen, Scotland. After taking a variety of jobs, he became a bantamweight boxer in Liverpool at age 16, and by age 17 had become a lightweight champion. With 42 professional bouts behind him, Bullard finally achieved his childhood dream on November 28, 1913, when he arrived in Paris on August 3, 1914. Germany declared war on France, and the next day his armies invaded France and neutral Belgium. Bullard, though still an American citizen, decided that he wanted to defend the country in which he had sought equality. He joined the Foreign Legion on October 19th. As a soldier in the Legion's 3rd Regiment de Marche and later the 170th Regiment de Ligne, I don't know if I pronounced that right, Bullard fought in the Champagne and Verdun campaigns with such distinction that he was awarded the Croix de Guerre with star as well as the Médaille Militaire. He was wounded 3 times, the last on March 5, 1916, leaving him too disabled for further infantry service. It was then that Bullard thought of rejoining the fight as an aviator, his ambition stoked by that friendly wager at the Café Capulet. With the help of some influential friends, Bullard was accepted into the French Aéronautique Militaire as a machine gunner. He started training at Cazaux on October 6th, but while there he met a fellow legionnaire, Edmund Shaw Clinton Gannett, who had already qualified as a pilot and was on hand for gunnery training. Gannett told Bullard about the Lafayette Flying Corps, an organization for farming American volunteers out to French squadrons, and explained that Helen Vanderbilt had established a fund from which its pilots could draw 50 francs, then about $30 a month. At that point, Bullard's Legion pay was a miserly 30 cents per month. Wow. With Gannett's backing, Bullard joined the LFC on November 15th for requested pilot training, and 15 days later reported the aviation school at Tours. Bullard called the elderly aircraft he flew at Tour-Cage Pool chicken coops. His training began with mastering the ground and handling characteristics of a Blériot 11 with clipped wings, officially called a rouleur, but more popularly known as a penguin. I'm guessing that means penguin. After 3 days of that, Bullard flew a progressive series of hops and flights in a Blériot and a Caudron G3. Following a serpentine maneuver and a spiral from 2,000 feet with the engine shut off the trip beam to land at a predetermined spot, Bullard received his pilot's certificate or brevet number 6259 on July 20th, 1917. granted 6 weeks leave, Bullard met his three friends in Paris wearing his blue aviator's tunic with wings on the collar. Jeff Dixon remarked, "Bullard, I am sorry I lost that kind of money to you or anyone else, but I'm glad that the first military Negro pilot aviator came from Dixie." Bullard resumed advanced training at Chateau Roux in Caudron G43s and G4s. By his own admission, he was never a great pilot and had some difficulty mastering the twin-engine G4. From Chateauroux, he was ordered to Avord, where he was placed in charge of the sleeping quarters of American volunteer airmen. Weeks passed and Bullard could not understand why pilots who arrived after him were going to the front while he was stuck on ground duty. Because he's black. Meanwhile, the United States had joined the Allied cause on April 6, 1917. 10 days later, Bullard's friend Edmund Genner, flying in the All-American Volunteer Escadrille in 124 Lafayette, was shot down by anti-aircraft fire, the first American to die since his country officially entered the war. Hoping to enter an officer's commission in the budding U.S. Army service, Bullard went to Paris for his medical examination. The doctors had claimed that although he had flat feet and large tonsils, he was otherwise fit to fly, but he didn't hear anything more about a transfer for some time. Bullard flattered until August 20th, where he received orders to report to Plessis, Belleville, the last stop before a unit assignment. Returning for a practice flight on his first day there, he found new orders waiting him, a report to Escadrille in 93 at Bar-le-Duc, 40 miles behind the lines near Verdun, where he had fought as a legionnaire. Upon receiving the news, Bullard remarked, "I'm heading for heaven or glory, hell or glory." During his leave, Bullard had bought a rhesus monkey. When he arrived at N93 on August 27th, he and his simian companion Jimmy quickly became the subject of much friendly banter with their French squadron mates. After a week of familiarization flying, Bullard was asked by Commandant Jean Monod, leader of Group de Combat 15, GC-15, of which N93 was part, if he was ready to fight. The American flyer was so enthusiastic that Menard felt it necessary to remind him of the cardinal rules for a neophyte pilot. Do not be too hasty, do not leave formation, and above all, do not attack, and always be prepared to defend yourself in a split second. As a general rule, the French scheduled flying time for 2 hours in the air and 4 hours on the ground unless there was an emergency. On September 8th, Bullard was scheduled for 2 mixed group patrols, both led by Captain Armand Pinsard of N78. In the course of addressing his pilots in person, Menard asked them to wish Bullard well on his first mission over enemy territory, remarking that he had more medals than any of them but fewer flying hours than all of them. Amid a roar of laughter, he added that it was their duty to prevent Jimmy from becoming an orphan. As Bullard settled into the cockpit, Jimmy snuggled into the lower half of his flying suit. Taking off and climbed to 6,000 feet, the patrol formed a V formation with Pinsard at the apex. Bullard, his head filled with all the do's and don'ts of aerial combat, worked hard to maintain formation while watching his leader's every signal and scanning in all directions, but the morning patrol turned out to be uneventful. The afternoon patrol turned out quite differently. The French were forming up at 6,000 feet when they spotted 4 German bombers being escorted by 16 fighters. Air battles rarely lasted more than 1 or 2 minutes at that point in the war. They were often over before inexperienced flyers even got their bearings. Bullard later confessed to firing at anything that appeared in front of him in a fight that transpired so quickly he had no time to feel frightened. The French claimed 4 bombers and 2 of their escorts. Only upon returning to base did Bullard realize that 2 of his comrades were missing. He had fired 75 rounds from his machine gun, and his mechanic found 7 bullets in the plane's tail. Over the next 2 weeks, Bullard gained experience and got over his jitters. On September 13th, he was transferred to Spar 85, a neighboring squadron. There he decorated his SPAD 7 with a bleeding red heart of a dagger through it on the fuselage side, along with the slogan, "Tout sang Google es rouge," all blood runs red. Combat was almost a daily occurrence over Verdun at that juncture. During a dogfight on November 7th, Bullard finally drove an opponent down, only to be attacked in turn and crash-landed in French lines with 96 bullet holes in his plane. Strict French confirmation standard required additional witnesses on the ground or from a balloon, which meant that Bullard's victim, which fell deep inside German territory, was counted only as a probable. A few days later, Bullard became separated from his formation and then spotted 7 Pfalz D3s 3,000 feet below him. Backing into a cloud, he came up behind the formation, squinted into the sun one last time to check for an ambush, and then dived. As his machine gun blazed, the rearmost plane in the fight staggered, stalled and fell away in a straight dive. Once again, however, a lack of witnesses prevented Bullard's second claim from being confirmed. While returning from a brief leave at Paris, Bullard got into an altercation with a French officer. The American flyer managed to avoid a court-martial only because of his superb combat record. On November 11th, however, he was dismissed from the Aéronautique Militaire, returned to his old regiment, the 170th, and was further humiliated by being assigned to its service battalion until his honorable discharge on October 23rd, 1919. Jimmy stayed behind as N93's mascot, but he did not survive the war. He became a victim of the influenza epidemic of 1918. Although Bullard's flying career had come to a premature conclusion, his devotion to the Legion and his beloved France never waned. In the 1920s and 30s, Bullard worked as a jazz drummer and also ran an athletic club and some nightclubs in Europe. During World War II, he enlisted in the machine gun company of the 51st Infantry Regiment and was wounded while fighting at Orléans on June 18, 1940. Escaping from German-occupied France, he arrived in New York on July 15, where he was later joined by his two daughters. Back in the United States for the first time in 34 years, Bullard settled in Harlem and spent the rest of the war working as a stevedore at the Staten Island shipyard. Eugene Bullard was employed as an elevator operator at Rockefeller Center in 1954, where French President Charles de Gaulle invited him back to Paris, where he helped to relight the flame on the tomb of the unknown soldier under the Arc de Triomphe. On October 9, 1959, the American pilot was again contacted by the French consulate, this time to notify that he was about to be made a Chevalier de la Légion d'Honneur for his service in 2 world wars. On October 12, 1961, 3 days after his 67th birthday, Bullard died of stomach cancer. The world's first black aviator was laid to rest in the Federation of French War Veterans Cemetery in Flushing, New York. Per his request, he was wearing the uniform of a French Foreign Legionnaire, and his casket was draped in the French tricolor. 33 years later, President Bill Clinton promoted Bullard to the rank of second lieutenant in the U.S. Air Force. I want to thank Professor Black Truth because he was the one who told me about this person. And also I want to mention something that I don't think was mentioned in this article, that's something Professor Black Truth mentioned, is that when he tried to apply to become a pilot for the U.S. Air Force when it was the fledgling one, when it was made in the First World War, but they said no because when they wanted pilots, they wanted white pilots. So anyway, please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll leave my Cash App so you can donate if you want. I'll leave my Instagram page. If you want to buy one of my t-shirts, I'll leave it there as well. I'm now a affiliate for Champ Boxes, so I'll leave that link in the description if you want a discount, and you can subscribe to my backup, which I'll leave in the pinned comment as well. Peace.